we begin tonight, I just want to share with you sort of the initiatives that we've been working on within the district. If you don't know me, my name is Gina Williams. I'm the Assistant Superintendent here in the district. And we've been working for a little over 3 years as a coalition, partnering with East Bridgewater Police Department, and we have Chief Allen here with us tonight, as well as the DA's office. Ed Jacobs at the DA's office is instrumental in a lot of the grant funding that we receive for trainings and programming that we're sending students to. Hillary Dubois is the director of the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative, and Hillary and her team are meeting with us on a monthly basis to just talk about what our issues are, what our concerns, our needs are, and then they're getting us the resources we need. And that's how we got Mary Cole to come with us this evening, talking about the vaping epidemic that really is all over the nation, but certainly we're most specifically concerned about East Bridgewater. So as we talk about what we can do to inform students and parents on the dangers, then we were able to tap into Hillary's resources so that she could bring Mary to us this evening. We also have Peter Spagone, aka my brother, who is chairman of the Board of Health. And it's very important for the Board of Health to partner with us as well, because certainly we're looking at the accessibility of students being able to get the products within our community. And unfortunately, a forum that was conducted in a nearby town, students were reporting East Bridgewater as one of the communities where they were able to access the vaping and e-cigarette paraphernalia. So certainly concerning to us as a district. So I know you're here to listen to Mary, so we'll get on with our program. I just want to give you a little bit of background on Mary. As I said, Hillary Dubois was the one to tap into Mary's expertise, and she was free, which was always something we like to hear, through a grant program. Mary is the program coordinator of the Greater Boston Tobacco-Free Community Partnership. So through that, it gives us the ability for her to be a resource to parents, to teachers, to towns, to support them in their intervention methods. Mary has a master's degree in public health from Boston University and is a certified health education specialist. And while she was at BU, she was instrumental in developing not only a curriculum, but also a photo voice project, which we actually did one here last year. Some of you may have seen the photo voice posters that students had created that were displayed in the lobby during parent conferences, both here at the junior senior high school as well as at the Mitchell School. So through the grant, Mary, in this position now, she spends most of her time, like she's doing this evening, educating parents, also working with teachers and coalitions and boards of health about e-cigarettes and the emerging tobacco products, municipal tobacco policies, and the tobacco and vaping industry tactics to hook another generation of kids on nicotine. And certainly one topic that we've been talking about is how it has really targeted our youth, especially with the types of flavors that a lot of the vape liquid is coming in. So Mary's here tonight to present to us information that we can take away, and then we'll have some time at the end for any questions people might have as well. Thanks.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you guys for having me, and thanks for coming out. This is a pretty solid crew for a parent night. Good job. You made double digits. But it shows that you guys care and you want to learn more. And I would say most parents really don't know that much about vaping and e-cigarettes. And this is really a great presentation for you guys to learn. So just a little bit more about what I do. So within my job that I'm grant funded through the Department of Public Health, my main roles are to help people quit nicotine and tobacco, provide smoke-free environments, and to prevent young people from using. And so I like to say I'm the friend because I work with communities like you guys, and I have technical assistants who are experts in each of these that I can refer people to. And yeah, and a big piece of what I do too is I go to local boards of health to help pass policy at the local level because that's youth prevention efforts there. Yes. So just, you guys know what we're doing today. We'll just go over some facts and figures, why we were here. This is an epidemic. Vaping 101, I have some products. That's why I ask if you guys can like kind of be together so I can pass them around, because I think it is actually really important to like see them in person and hold them. And then we'll also go over the facts about vaping, give you guys the straight facts. Is it water vapor? It's not water vapor, it's an aerosol. Additionally, frequently asked questions. We'll talk about how the industry is targeting young people, because it's no coincidence that young people are using this stuff. It's done on purpose by the industry. I have some resources then, so you guys won't go away feeling lost. And then finally, Q&A. So if you guys do have a question, it's a small crew, so feel free to ask. But I would say try to hold your questions until the end, unless it's a clarifying question for something that I just said. Because within all this, I normally go over most people's questions. So we're here because vaping is an epidemic right now. The Surgeon General in December, he actually declared vaping as an epidemic. He really said all hands on deck for this epidemic right now. Our young people are getting addicted to this. I would say every school that I have gone to, schools are calling vaping like a crisis in their schools, and schools are really struggling because kids are vaping a lot in schools. A lot of kids are calling the bathrooms the Jewel Lounge or the Jewel Room. Kids that don't vape are scared to go to the bathroom because they're scared they might get caught with someone else vaping in there and it might be blamed on them. So it comes to kids going home and like holding it all day and not going to the bathroom. So it's really pervasive in the schools right now. And I'm sure you guys have heard that as well. Maybe that's why you're here, because you're really concerned about that. But as we talk about too, like we do have tools for prevention that we will go over for e-cigarettes, and it's really just based on our cigarette prevention efforts that have done really well. So what's really interesting, this is 2017 data on Massachusetts high school use of tobacco products. So we have cigarette use at an all-time low, at 6%. That's an all-time low. And right now, if you ask any kids if they would smoke cigarettes, most would say no, right? That's gross, that smells, it'll give you cancer. Like, that's not cool. But with e-cigarettes or vape pens, kids don't make that association at all. They don't associate e-cigarettes / vape pens with cigarettes at all. And so that is a really big problem. And so that's why we have about 1 in 5 Massachusetts high schoolers using e-cigarettes in the past 30 days, which we consider regular use. So this is an interesting graph of tobacco use among high schoolers since 1995. So that red is cigarette use, and just like watch that decline, right? That's because we put in smoke-free policies at the workplace, right? You could used to smoke in work, you could used to smoke at restaurants and bars and hospitals. Also, we taxed cigarettes, so they're not affordable for young people anymore. So that's one reason that kids aren't using. Also media, curriculums, we really got the education out there and changed the social norm around cigarette use, which brought us to 6.4% today. But then as you can see, kind of that purple on the top is e-cigarette use. And that kind of came out of nowhere in 2015. I think schools kind of felt blindsided by it maybe last year or the year before, 2 years ago maybe it started coming, or last year was pretty bad. Yeah, last year was when it really started to get bad. But yeah, and so it's like as cigarette use is almost gone, e-cigarette use came out of nowhere, it feels like. And just for middle school, so we know, we have about 1 in 10 middle schoolers using e-cigarettes, which is kind of high, and I'm hearing a lot more of middle schoolers starting to use e-cigarettes as well, which is pretty concerning. And even going into elementary school, I'm hearing some kids are experimenting with it at elementary school. Yeah, so that's something kind of scary as well. All right, does anyone recognize that on the right? What is it? Anyone? Yeah, that's a Juul. So I'll be talking about the Juul a lot, but that is the Juul. The Juul has over 75% of the e-cigarette market right now. So this is kind of what spurred a lot of this vaping epidemic. So we'll just do a brief of what is vaping. These are all vape products right here. So vape products, e-cigarettes, they come in all different sizes, shapes, colors, names. They can look like school supplies, like pens, like USBs, like erasers. They can even look like other tobacco products, like those e-pipes or e-cigars. But I don't think anyone uses those e-pipes or e-cigars. But yeah, if you want to go to the next slide. So they look different, but they all basically work in the same way. So there's a battery. That battery, it heats up the atomizer that has metal coils in it. Those metal coils then heat up some sort of liquid, whether it's an e-liquid that has nicotine, or it could be another substance as well, like marijuana / that THC oil that we know kids are starting to vape. And then you inhale through the mouthpiece. And that creates an aerosol that is inhaled. So like I mentioned, it's using a battery-operated device that you inhale through. Some different names: e-cigs, vape pens, e-hookahs, tanks, mods, electronic nicotine delivery systems, or ENDS, which is what healthcare professionals call it. No one else calls it that, it's just healthcare professionals. Also, kids will never say that they're vaping an e-cigarette. That's not cool. That's not an e-cigarette, it's a vape pen or it's a Juul. Juul is a brand of e-cigarettes. Juul has nicotine. Juul has a lot of nicotine. Juul is an e-cigarette. Kids might deny that it's an e-cigarette, but it is an e-cigarette. So there's so many different names for this stuff, and they come in all these varieties and names, but they all basically do the same thing. So just a little bit more background on this stuff, and I'm going to pass stuff around now. So these disposable e-cigarettes are kind of what the initial e-cigarettes were when they started. So that one on the left, it looks like a cigarette, right? And that's what a lot of people think of when they think of e-cigarettes, the ones that mimic cigarettes. And so e-cigarettes were actually invented back in the early 2000s by a Chinese pharmacist whose father passed away from lung cancer from smoking. So he was trying to create some sort of quit smoking device. So that's why everyone thinks that e-cigarettes are to help you quit smoking, because they kind of were created for that purpose in the beginning. So these disposable e-cigarettes, they're called e-cigarettes. They might be called e-hookahs as well. And they come pre-charged, the e-liquid already in it, and then you just throw the whole thing out when you're done. So that's how these ones work. I'll pass those around. And then we started, so when they first started, it was more of like that tobacco flavor, or not even really a flavor that much, that had nicotine in it. But then we started to see more flavors. And so the ones that I'm passing around, those have flavors as well. So we started to see a lot more flavors with those. And then we have vape pens. These are refillable, and you can add this e-liquid separately from them. These vape pens that look like this specifically, that especially have the glass circle here, they're typically used for marijuana or that THC oil. This one was confiscated from a school, and it was at the end, and you can actually see some of the THC oil in there. It's a bit thicker, and it's a little bit more tan, where the e-liquid that has nicotine in it is clear, typically. So I'll pass that around, but that's a way to know if someone's vaping marijuana or not. And then we have these big tank or mod systems. And this is kind of when there is that vaping trend, when the vape shops opened, and people would have those like competitions where they blow clouds and try to like make cooler, bigger clouds. A lot of these are customizable. You can take pieces out. They can be really expensive as well. Again, you take e-liquid and you put it in. These are refillable. Like this one's really heavy. And this one also was confiscated from a school, and it keeps turning on and it leaks a lot, but that's why it's in the plastic bag, so I'll hand that around. And then we have these and those are also rechargeable as well, same with the vape pens. And then these other rechargeable e-cigarettes or the Mod Pods, like the Juul, is what really took off. And so with these, they have the e-liquid in a pod that's separate. So this plastic pod, and then with, I don't have hands, it has a charger that's magnetic, and you can just plug it right into a laptop or a USB just like that. And so it's rechargeable, and you just get more pods when the pod runs out of e-liquid. So that's how the Juul and these similar devices work. So that what's in the e-liquid? In the e-liquid is propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, food additives, and nicotine. That's typically what's always in these e-liquids or e-juices of what it's called. So I have one right here. It's an example. There's tons of flavors in it that are really appealing to kids. And like I said, it can also, these can come pre-filled in pods as well. And something else to note about these e-liquids is e-cigarettes / the e-liquids are currently not regulated by the FDA. So that means their ingredients don't have to be accurate. So I like to show this example that I have right here. So it says it has 0 nicotine, which is what that 0 means on the front. The back says this does not contain nicotine, and that last ingredient is nicotine. So this is my sample to show a lot of these products that say they don't have nicotine, they actually do have nicotine in them, and the reason is the FDA does not regulate them. So the FDA did have the authority to regulate e-cigarettes in 2016. However, they delayed it till 2022. But then now it's 2021. So that's what's happening with there, which is kind of unfortunate a bit. But I'll pass this around. It smells really good too. Okay, so a little bit more about Juul. Juul is kind of known as the iPod of e-cigarettes. It just like feels good in your hand. It's so discreet. And the other piece of it is that it heats up the e-liquid, the nicotine, and you inhale it, it goes down a lot better, and you feel that nicotine a lot faster, and it's a lot stronger. And the reason for that is Juul is one of the first to create their e-liquid with a salt-based nicotine, which basically means that you're going to feel that nicotine a lot faster, where other e-cigarettes before were free-based nicotine. So that's a difference. There's also benzoic acid in Juul, which I think helps with the absorption of the nicotine as well. But yeah, so I'm going to show a video now of Juul if you want to bring that up. And I want you guys to see the kids using this stuff and also how they talk about the head rush and the buzz they get from the nicotine here as well. And I can pass the Juul around as we're watching.
In case you're new, everyone at my school, Jules.
Something that is literally sweeping the nation everywhere I go. It is a whole thing.
Yo, what is going on, guys? It's your Smoke.
Today's video is gonna be a Juul sesh. We got the mango pod.
The cool cucumber.
Fruit and medley. I've got this creme pod because I thought it would be festive.
It tastes great.
Well, if you want a head rush, definitely the Juul.
That's really strong.
My God, bro, give me the biggest neck buzz.
Oh my God.
The Juul challenge. You gotta hit this thing as many times as you can.
We're doing the Juul Hotbox Insane Nick Buzz Challenge, you dig?
I got some accessories.
Juul wraps. Type in charging case for Juul.
Rolo bag.
Sword and drop. Ghost stick.
This one is watermelon. It is literally so good.
so that's from the Truth Initiative, which is an organization that educates young people basically about the tobacco industry targeting them. So they historically have done a lot with cigarettes, which I remember seeing commercials on TV back in the day with cigarettes. But now they're starting to do more stuff educating about e-cigarettes. And as you can see from that, you can see the Juul advertising that was targeting young people directly with those images for sure, right? That was their initial marketing campaign. Yeah, and the big thing about Juul is the insane amount of nicotine that is in Juul. So key takeaway to go away with. Juul, one baby Juul pod that's going around, when you see that Juul pod that you take out, it's this big. It has 20 cigarettes worth of nicotine in it. Like, it's an insane amount of nicotine. Juul is highly, highly addictive. And to show how much nicotine is in there, the European Union, they regulate the amount of nicotine that's in their e-cigarettes. And Juul actually has 3 times the amount of nicotine that's allowed in the EU. So these Juul pods aren't allowed in the EU. However, Juul has, so this has 5% nicotine according to Juul, and they're now making some with 3% nicotine as well. And then the other question I always get about Juul is how much does it cost? Actually, if you want to go back to the other slide for a second. So this is a starter pack right here. And so it has the charger, 4 pods, and that base. That's typically $50 for the starter pack, which is kind of expensive, right? But then if you break it down, once you invest in that, then a pack of 4 of Juul pods is $16. So each Juul pod is $4 each. They're also starting to sell packs of 2 for the Juul pods for $10, so each is $5 each. So that's actually pretty cheap, especially considering a pack of cigarettes goes for about $10 now. So it's like half the price of a pack of cigarettes, and it's equivalent to a pack of cigarettes. So Juul says it's about 200 puffs till you finish one. So however it lasts is kind of how much, maybe how addicted you are to it, or if it's a social thing with friends, if everyone's passing it around, it'll probably go pretty quickly. It is a tiny little thing. Yeah, so it kind of depends on your addiction level. So if you're addicted, maybe 2 a day or 1 a day. So that's what I've heard. I've heard as many as 4 a day. So it depends. Yeah. And the other thing that video showed was how there is all these accessories, and also how there's always something new. So we can never keep up with the tobacco and vaping industry because they're always putting something out there new. They're always one step ahead of us. So some examples, this is a Suron drop. This one feels good in your hands too. And that's starting to get more popular. I'll pass that around. It looks like a highlighter or like a eraser. I don't know what this is, but a school confiscated it and they had a bunch of them. So it's just another sort of vape pen that I'll pass around as well. Yeah. Oh, and then there's also like Juul knockoffs that you can see as well. They look like Juul, they're cheaper than Juul. There's pods that are compatible with Juul as well. Okay, so this is a good slide, and this is one of my key takeaways for you to go home with, is the big misperception is a lot of people think that e-cigarettes and vape pens, that they produce water vapor, and that it's flavored water that you're vaping, and that is not true. It is actually an aerosol. So it's not water vapor, it's an aerosol. An aerosol is like a hairspray, right? Aerosol is not okay in your lungs. And that's what the Surgeon General says, that it's an aerosol. So that aerosol, it has ultra-fine particles that when inhaled, stick deep in your lungs. What's in there is there's cancer-causing chemicals that are in e-cigarettes. What are some chemicals? We know that when propylene glycol, or studies have shown when propylene glycol is heated to a certain level, it creates formaldehyde. Propylene glycol is one of the main ingredients in all e-cigarettes. We also know like benzene, which is found in car exhaust, has been found in this as well. And there's like a whole list of other cancer-causing chemicals that I can't think of off the top of my head. But we also know that there's heavy metals in there, like nicotine and lead have been found, volatile organic compounds. We also know that those flavorings in there, that those aren't safe to inhale either, because that's still a chemical, right, if you're flavoring it. So diacetyl is one of the flavorings that's found in a lot of e-cigarettes, and that's actually linked to a serious lung disease called popcorn lung. The nickname's popcorn lung, which is an irreversible scarring of the lungs. And so it delivers symptoms for trouble breathing similar to COPD would. So the issue, and that you'll hear too, is like, I can say all this stuff is in here, right? We know it's in here, but we don't know the long-term health consequences of it yet, because it hasn't been around long enough to be studied. So that's kind of a tough part that we have going right now. But the thing that we do know, and we do know a decent amount about, is nicotine. And so what we know about nicotine is that nicotine is especially harmful to adolescents, and that nicotine is what's found in tobacco products, which is the addictive substance in tobacco products. It's highly, highly addictive, especially for young people. We know that adult smokers, that about 9 out of 10 adult smokers started to smoke before their 18th birthday. 9 out of 10. That shows how uniquely sensitive the adolescent brain is to nicotine addiction. The younger you are when you start, the more likely you are to get hooked for life. That's what nicotine does to the adolescent brain. We also know that research shows young people that use e-cigarettes are about 4 times more likely to go on to using combustible tobacco products, like cigarettes. So when we have these kids who are vaping and saying, I would never smoke cigarettes, research shows they're actually 4 times more likely to go on to using those cigarettes. So what else we know about nicotine and the adolescent brain? We know that the brain, adolescent brain's developing until about age 25, right? And so what nicotine does is it interferes with that brain development, and it actually structurally and chemically can change the makeup of the brain. So what does that do? It can lead to impulse control issues, trouble learning, trouble with judgment as well. It also can lead to mood disorders like depression. And something else that we know is that nicotine can prime the adolescent brain for addiction to other drugs in the future. So this is all really concerning stuff about nicotine. Okay, frequently asked questions. Are e-cigarettes safe? I think we know the answer is no, they are not safe, especially for anyone that does not use any tobacco products. So what the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, says, if you don't use tobacco products, you should not start, especially if you're a young person or pregnant person. And the confusing piece is with adult smokers, what the recommendation is for that. Because I'm sure plenty of people have heard, like, maybe a doctor saying to switch over to e-cigarettes if you smoke cigarettes. So here's the deal with that. We know that cigarettes kill 1 in 2 users. Cigarettes are really, really harmful and dangerous. So kind of anything that's not a cigarette is less harmful. So that's why the CDC says if you use cigarettes and you totally switch over to e-cigarettes, it's likely better for you if you're not interested in quitting. However, e-cigarettes are not a quit smoking device. There's no evidence to show that they help you quit smoking. What ends up happening is you end up dual using, you use cigarettes and e-cigarettes. And then you get kind of like double the chemicals because you're using both. Or what happens is if you do switch over totally to e-cigarettes, you're still inhaling all those chemicals and you still have a nicotine addiction. So that's why it's recommended for nicotine replacement therapy and coaching and counseling to get off of cigarettes. So that's kind of the deal with that. I talked about how we need more research on all of this stuff. It's all so new. So we just don't have information on long-term health consequences of e-cigarettes. It's just not there. It hasn't been around long enough. And the other piece is that secondhand vape, that's not safe for anyone around you either, just like secondhand smoke. So if you smell that vapor or that aerosol, that's not safe for you. And I think that's like a pretty big problem now that I see a lot of people vaping inside and thinking it's okay. And I see people vaping at bars or on the train or on the T in schools. We know it's happening in the schools. So if you smell that, it's not safe for you, or it's not safe for anyone who can smell that. Other dangers, well, a recent one is you guys hear about the seizures that apparently are happening with e-cigarettes. That's something new. There's always something new that's kind of coming out. What else with e-cigarettes? They've exploded. You've probably heard of second-degree burns, people going to the hospital for some of this stuff. Nicotine poisoning is another thing, because just nicotine exposure itself is toxic. So that's worrisome, especially for like little kids, if they get a hold of any of that stuff, like the e-liquids. There's been a bunch of calls to poison control for that. And yeah, the reason that I'm like wiping down all this stuff when I'm handing it out that's leaking is because you can absorb the nicotine through your skin as well. And also with nicotine poisoning, we're seeing kids get nicotine poisoning just from vaping too much. Because you saw in that video how kids were like inhaling and inhaling and inhaling and inhaling. They're getting a lot of nicotine when they're doing that. So some signs of nicotine poisoning right there might be like nausea, it could be vomiting, dizziness, things like that are signs of nicotine poisoning from vaping too much. So I kind of talked about this a little about how e-cigarettes and vape pens can be used to vape other products. I mentioned the marijuana, the THC oil that's derived from marijuana is that piece that gives your head high. And we know that the THC oil is really, really strong. And so I am hearing that is a big concern from schools, is that kids are vaping marijuana in schools now and getting like kind of like out of your mind high in schools. So that's definitely a concern. And so those open systems, you can put the marijuana or anything else in there as well. You can also open up the Juul. So with the pod, you can actually open up that Juul pod and put whatever you want in there. With like pliers, basically, you can pop it off. Also, there are Juul compatible, or people make knockoff pods that have THC oil in it that can go right in the Juul. Yeah, and then the other thing to note is like it might not even just be like THC oil or those e-liquids that I'm talking about, but there's also other illicit drugs that are now in forms of liquid as well, which I think is really concerning. Also, I had a school nurse tell me that a kid vaped alcohol, a kid vaped gasoline. So just like kids are wild, so if you can vape it, they might. There's that whole Tide Pod thing too, so kids are crazy, so they might do crazy things with vape pens. So just to keep note of. So some signs of vaping. One is an unexplained sweet scent where you normally wouldn't smell a sweet scent. So like the boys' bathrooms or locker rooms, if they smell good, that's probably a sign that someone's vaping, because that's not normal. And yeah, it's like really like a very abnormally sweet, fruity, candy-like scent is what you'll smell that kind of comes out of nowhere. So that's what vaping is. Also, we know with vaping that smoke/vapor, it dissipates pretty quickly. So the more that you inhale and the more that you take in, the more cloud is going to come out. But the less that you intake, the faster the cloud's going to dissipate. There's also something called like stealth vaping that I've heard of recently, where basically you try to get no vapor to come out or very little vapor, so no one knows that you're vaping around you. So you basically just like inhale a little bit at a time, like leave it in your mouth or throat for a while, and then like slowly exhale. And that's supposed to like make it more discreet, so you can maybe vape somewhere like inside. There's also zero vaping where nothing comes out after. I think you hold it in your mouth or something so long that it like totally disappears. So those are just some trends that are going on. The other thing to keep an eye out for are unfamiliar products. So like you guys saw some products right now, which is really good, which half that stuff I'm sure you wouldn't guess were vaping devices. So looking for looking for things that are unusual, or so the pods too. Like I've seen these caps all the time. Those caps are, yeah, so those are the caps to the Juul pods, or like empty pods itself. Also that Juul charger, I think we were talking about before that, the Juul charger literally looks like a USB. And it fits in a USB drive as well. So things like that are good to keep an eye out for. So where are kids getting this stuff? We know that kids, they can get these directly from a retailer. This is a survey done on the right from the Truth Initiative, from that video that we showed before. It was about 1,000 kids across the states who are in high school, and they could select multiple answers, and so this was the result. It said, and they could select multiple answers, so they had 74% got them from that physical retail location themselves, underage. 52% were from a social source, and then 6% were from the internet. From what I'm hearing and from what local surveys are saying is most kids are getting them from social sources. So a friend that's older, an older sibling, or maybe they know someone that can get it directly from the retailer themselves and buy it from that person. So maybe there might be like little business kids starting to sell stuff to underage kids as well, is kind of what we're hearing. Also online, online's actually the least common, but it still is possible in a lot of ways, especially we know kids are using online gift cards to get that stuff, and it's pretty easy. Our Attorney General, Maura Healey, has actually cracked down on a lot of companies selling online to minors, and I think they sent like cease and desist letters to a few online retailers for those who are selling to young people. So that's good. But yeah, so social sources is the main one there. And then we do know that while retailers are supposed to only sell to 21 plus now in Massachusetts, there are still some places that kids can get them from. Okay, so you can actually keep clicking through this a little bit. So we know that the tobacco industry has targeted young people for a very long time. And so this is kind of just to show some quotes from the tobacco industry of how, like the top right one, younger adult smokers are the only source of replacement smokers. If younger adults turn away from smoking, the industry must decline. Like, this shows how the industry has all along known that young people are the base of their business because they can get hooked for life. So that means they're the most profitable because if you can get them hooked young, they're stuck on that for the rest of their lives. It's really hard to get off of it. And that's the same with cigarettes. But yeah, so these are just some quotes that are a reminder that the tobacco industry has targeted young people, and they're using those same exact tactics with e-cigarettes right now. And this is just a graph showing how that red is dollars spent on e-cigarette advertisements, and then that blue is past 30-day e-cigarette use among young people. And so it just shows like that the industry is targeting young people with their advertisements, that it directly increases the use of e-cigarettes with the advertising. So what are some of the tactics? I'm just gonna go over these super quickly. The industry makes their stuff sweet, over 8,000 flavors, cheap. They know kids are price sensitive, so they want them to have impulse buys, and they want them to get started by having something be super cheap and easy to get, AKA they want this stuff to be everywhere in sight because they want this stuff to be normalized for them. So this picture's kind of crazy because it has over 15 tobacco products in here, and it all looks like candy, right? So in 2009, the FDA, they banned flavored cigarettes, right? So we don't have flavored cigarettes anymore, except for menthol and mint, because actually the tobacco industry lobbied so hard that they got mint and menthol wintergreen exempt from that restriction because they made a lot of money from that. So what happened after that they banned these other flavors is that there is a very large increase in all other flavored tobacco products. especially cigars, chew, and especially e-cigarettes as well. So that's why, and flavors are a leading reason why young people, youth are using e-cigarettes and tobacco products in general, because flavors make this stuff seem harmless. We know that cotton candy and mango sounds a lot better than tobacco, right? A young person might not ever start if there was only tobacco e-cigarettes around. But hey, mango and cotton candy, like, that sounds really innocent. Yeah, and so the flavors are really, really targeted at young people. It's not for older people. These are considered starter products for young people. And these are just examples of some. I found that blue slushy one by my house on the ground, which was really sad, because I just thought about how when you go to a convenience store, now there's all these e-cigarette products there, and like in the convenience stores, like I would always get like a blue slushy back in the day, and so now I'm like, oh my god, a blue slushy vape or e-juice. That's really sad. But yeah, that's just some examples. Also cheap. So e-cigarettes, they are not regulated the same as other tobacco products. So there can be discounts on this stuff. Juul has had a lot of discounts as well. On the starter kit, they had like a $15 refer your friend. They had stuff like $15 off in convenience stores as well. And again, we know youth are really price sensitive. And so actually one of the leading reasons that young people don't use cigarettes is because of the tax on cigarettes, because it's so high. I'm gonna go to the next one. These are just examples of stuff that I've ordered online. I got this pack, it's blue, e-cigarettes. It was supposed to be $20. It was supposed to be plus $13 shipping, so $33. And I got it for $1.06. And then I got another one as well for $2.13. Where is it? But yeah, it's just, there's a lot of discounts. It's not the same as cigarettes, and they're doing that on purpose to try to get people started on this stuff. And then finally, this stuff is everywhere, and it's actually interesting too, going in gas stations and convenience stores, because that e-cigarettes and vape products were used to only in like vape shops before. But now in some convenience stores and gas stations, like they're starting to look like vape shops, which I think is pretty wild. And again, it's put right next to the candy, right at eyesight, and that's to normalize this stuff and to expose kids to it. And research shows that the more kids see tobacco products in convenience stores and gas stations, the more likely they are to start using it. So yeah, this is like one of the tobacco industry's biggest tactics as well, is to normalize this stuff, to have it everywhere in their site. Just some pictures from what I've seen. There's the $15 off Juul starter kit. There's a lot of signs like Juul sold here, stores advertising that, convenience stores. And that's a convenience store, that there's actually a whole other wall of vaping supplies in that convenience store that I took a picture of. And I was like, I don't know how this is a convenience store. It's like a lot of vape supplies. So that's just stuff that we're seeing. And finally, we know just like advertisements in general are targeted at young people. You saw that video before with Juul. Their launch campaign in 2015 was this, like targeted at young people, targeted at like these like attractive young girls and men, and they used influencers on social media. They were using Instagram. So right now when Juul's saying, like, it's really weird that kids are using our products, like, we don't know why. Like, look at their launch campaign. They targeted kids specifically. And Juul is now, like, I forget how many $1 billion worth. And Philip Morris, or Altria, their parent owner, invested 35% stake in there. They wouldn't be worth that much if it was for adult smokers who are going away, that are transferring or to Juul for an alternative. This is because they have a whole new generation on e-cigarettes, and it's normalized. So yeah, that's my little stab at Juul. Also, our Attorney General, Maura Healey, is currently investigating Juul for marketing to young people right now. So that's great that she's taking that step. And part of the reason she's doing that is because when she would go to schools across the state, a lot of the schools would say, like, Juul is our biggest problem. And so she kind of was like, what is Juul? And looked more into it and just kind of saw how they took the same tactics the tobacco industry has used to target young people. Okay, so we'll do some quick resources and then Q&A for anything that I haven't answered. So state laws. So you guys might know that there's some new tobacco laws that were passed just this winter. So the new legal sales age for purchasing any tobacco is 21 in Massachusetts. However, there's this weird grandfathering clause that was added to it, which means if that town or city did not go to 21 before December 31st, 2018, that they're grandfathered in, which means if you're 18 before that date, you can still buy. So if you're 18, 19, 20, you can still buy in that town. However, most towns did go to 21. I think it's like over 92% of the state went to 21. So there are a few towns trickled in there where like 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds can still buy. Also, the state law included e-cigarettes, the definition of tobacco, and in their smoke-free workplace law. So where you can't smoke, you can't vape now. So no one should be vaping inside. Also, it was included in the Education Reform Act. So tobacco is included, or e-cigarette is included in the tobacco definition for schools as well. And then the other big thing Massachusetts did was they banned the sale of tobacco, which includes e-cigarettes, in pharmacies and healthcare institutions. And we're actually the first state to do that. So that's pretty cool that we're the first state to do that. And it's kind of wild to even think that pharmacies sell tobacco, because pharmacies are supposed to be a healthcare place that like improve your health and prescribe medicine. So it is great that Massachusetts took that step to do so. So going along with that, one big prevention step that you can take is to pass local tobacco regulations in your town. And I know that you guys have a couple here in East Bridgewater, but I think a few more that you might be able to do are restrict all flavored tobacco products to adult-only shops. So in those convenience stores and gas stations, like kids can't see any of these flavored products. No flavored e-cigarettes, no flavored cigars or chew or any of that. So that's like a big push from our end that we want to see that stuff out. Also, you can cap the number of tobacco licenses in towns because we know that exposure is a really big deal, so we want to decrease that amount of exposure. You can also do something called a dual cap, where you limit the number of tobacco retailers and also can limit the number of vape shops as well, or adult-only shops, because there are a lot of vape shops that are popping up, and a lot of towns and parents specifically are kind of upset that there's so many vape shops popping up. So those are just a few you can do there, and there's more information on the state's website at makesmokinghistory.org. So the other piece, you guys came here, I hope you learned a lot, learned more about e-cigarettes, but if you do need to talk about more facts, whether if it's with your young person or friends, etc., here's some reputable sites for you to go to. Surgeon General, always good. Centers for Disease Control, always good as well. The Massachusetts site that I kind of like work under is at getoutraged.org, and so that will have a little bit more localized information there. And this is just the homepage for getoutraged.org. If you guys want more info on vaping, get the facts, tips for talking with your kids for parents. And there's also a school toolkit on there for schools that has a lot of helpful resources and curriculums and a couple other things in there that are kind of helpful for schools. What else is there? So you have one of those handouts, the frequently asked questions. I got that for free at the Massachusetts Clearinghouse. They also have a sheet, tips for talking with your kids, a fact sheet on there as well, and a poster, and also a no smoking / vaping sticker. So that stuff's all free. That stuff is also all targeted to adults. So we don't want any of that stuff to go to kids because we have a new youth campaign that I'll talk about. I think it's at the end of my slides. But this stuff is all meant for adults. It was tested on adults, except for the sticker. Also, a big thing, I'm here talking to you guys, there's like maybe 15 of you guys here. We want to get this information out, so if you do have good networks to get this information out, post some of the facts from the websites, or you can also work with me to share information. I have a technical assistant I work with who does a lot of media stuff, so I do work with communities to get stuff out on media about this stuff as well. Because right now, there's so many misperceptions going around about e-cigarettes and vaping that we just really need to get all the information out there that we can. Social media, Department of Public Health has its Make Smoking History, so they have stuff like this that if you guys do have social media on something, you can share for adults as well. On that school toolkit, this is just an example of all of the different school curriculums that are on there. So for prevention purposes, we really are pushing getting e-cigarettes in school curriculums because a lot of the times schools are doing assemblies to educate the kids on this stuff. However, that doesn't build like refusal and analytical skills. So it's kind of just like, okay, here's some facts, and then you walk away. And so we really do want to make sure e-cigarettes are in those curriculums. One that we're pushing is Catch My Breath curriculum. It's 4 sessions. We have someone that can implement the first one for free as well that I work with. But yeah, there's a few. Aspire, I've been told, is a good one for younger, like middle school as well. But yeah, so that's all in the school toolkit. Another thing is the 84 movement. So the 84 represents the 84% of Massachusetts youth who did not smoke in 2007 when this organization started. So it's 2019, like 93% of young people don't smoke cigarettes and 20% vape e-cigarettes. So they need to change their name. They're looking to change their name. But this is basically a youth movement under the Department of Public Health's tobacco program. And it's peer-to-peer education. It's totally free to join. And any school, any after-school club, like a SAD chapter, civics club, even like a YMCA or Boys and Girls Club, if they have kids that are there, you can start an 84 chapter. It's free. A trainer comes to you and does a session on different topics about tobacco and vaping. They can also train the kids to talk to younger kids. They can train them to go to their local board of health to change policy. Last week we had Kick Butts Day. So there was like over 200 kids at the State House, and they all went and talked to their legislators about vaping. And it was pretty cool. I went with some of the kids, and like they were amazing speaking to their legislators. So there's a couple statewide events that are pretty great with the 84. So I always really encourage just schools, organizations, if you have young people that work on substance use prevention, you can start an 84 chapter for free. You can be as involved as you want. If you want to go to the next slide. They also have, so there's trainings, and they also have mini grants as well that they have come up once or twice a year to work on different projects as well. Statewide events like Kick Butts Day, and they even have a statewide leadership team where kids can work with other kids from across the state on this stuff, which kids tend to really like, and they really build good skills from. So I love the 84. I think it's really great for schools and organizations to start it. And you can go, that's just information if you want to start one. So just some extra tips for talking with young people. So you have those facts, you have the reputable sites you can go to. So dispel those myths. It's not water vapor, it's actually an aerosol. Talk about that nicotine. Nicotine's highly addictive. Nicotine can harm your adolescent brain because it's still developing. Like, do you want to be addicted for life? Like, hey, like your uncle or like your grandma, like, do you want to be vaping for the rest of your life like them and have that really hard time quitting? That's what happens with nicotine when you start so young. If the other piece to that is telling young people that the tobacco and vaping industries are targeting them specifically. So we know a lot of the times kids, they don't really care about long-term health consequences, right? Like, that's not going to happen to them. Like, cancer's not going to happen to them. Addiction's not going to happen to them. But if you tell them that the industry specifically is targeting them, because the younger they start, the more likely they are to get hooked for life, and they're the industry's most profitable customer because of that, because they're hooked for so long. And then you have them be like, look at all these flavors. Look at Juul's launch campaign targeting kids. Kids don't like that. They don't like getting conned. And so that's actually a key piece of those best practice curriculums that I showed before, is they have kids analyzing the industry, targeting them, and even analyzing e-cigarette advertisements compared to cigarette advertisements. So that's a big piece there. Other tips, so just for parents, we know that parents are actually the #1 influence on their kids' decision to use alcohol and other drugs. Even if it feels like they're not listening, the more you disapprove of something, the more likely they are to not use it. They're listening, even if they seem like they're not. But yeah, and so for an example, I had a parent tell me like that Juul commercial comes on KISS 108 when they're in the car listening to the radio, and they always just turn it off. Well, if that Juul commercial comes on, hey, maybe that's a time to chat about Juul and what they know about it. And they're trapped in the car, so you can't leave. Or also, if you see someone vaping, or if you see a big cloud come out of somewhere, there's another chance to talk with your kid about that and what's going on as well. So yeah, just a few tips there. Okay, so the youth campaign. So this launched at Kick Butts Day last week on Wednesday, and I don't have any of the materials with me today, which I was hoping I would, to give to the school. But actually, if you want to show that video quickly.
Did you know vape pods can have as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes? And nicotine can harm your brain, including your memory and ability to learn. Vapes and cigarettes may be different, but they have the same dangers for young people. Get the facts at mass.gov/vaping.
Okay, so that was it. But yeah, so they just launched this, and they're going to have more short videos like that across. But so they have that YouTube video that you guys can feel free to share on any channels Youth Watch. There's also an Instagram account, Get the Vape Facts. They have a website on the Department of Public Health. It's mass.gov/vaping that has all the facts that kids can go to. And there's also stuff for schools, posters, handouts, mirror clings. That's also at the Massachusetts Clearinghouse where that adult stuff was, and it's all free as well. Next slide. So here's the poster. And so again, schools can order this stuff. It has the facts. I'll go to the next one. The handout, it's front and back. It has a lot of the information that's on the website as well. And then mirror clings. These are meant for like the mirrors in bathrooms or for doors or for windows, and they're just these little squares with fact on it. And so you can order those. And so that's just to kind of like get these straight facts from kids. The next one. So in addition to that material, there's also a paid digital media campaign that's going on to ages 12 to 17. There's going to be some video ads on websites that youth frequent, paid Instagram ads, paid Snapchat ads, paid Spotify ads. Also those YouTube animated videos like that one that you just saw. So yeah, the Department of Public Health, they did like focus groups with youth across Massachusetts, and that's how they came up with this campaign, because the kids said, we don't really associate cigarettes with e-cigarettes. We don't really see addiction as a piece of this. And they also said, we want the facts straight. Like, don't play with us, give us the facts straight. And so that's why how this campaign came about. So hopefully it does really well. You'll also probably see some billboards up on this as well, because that's part of it as well. Okay, and for quitting. So the issue with quitting e-cigarettes for young people is that it's very new, so there is nothing evidence-based out there right now. So it is a struggle that we're having with so many young people being addicted and the resources that we have for that. And so the first thing that I do say is if a kid is addicted, and some signs of addiction, irritable, agitated, maybe not acting like themselves. Also, they could even have some like nausea if they're vaping too much, like I talked about as well. What are other signs? But yeah, if just that nicotine addiction, if you're noticing changes in their behavior like that, maybe not as active with sports and stuff too. That could be a thing, because they have to go get that hit. Those are some signs. But so what we do have is the Truth Initiative came up with this like I don't know how to describe it. It's like a texting to quit where they send advice of how to quit and tips. So if you have a craving, you can like text crave and they'll send you tips on how to get through that craving. They'll also help you with a quit date and help you get to that quit date there via text. And it's specific to Juul and vape products. And you say how old you are, or you give the age range you are, and it'll give tailored information there. They also have, for parents, you can also text as a parent to get tips. And they also have some apps like This Is Quitting and Become an X that are compatible with the texting as well. Smoke Free Teen's another one that's up there. And then the other piece is kids can go to their, we do recommend kids going to their pediatrician if they are addicted, and the pediatrician at their discretion can potentially prescribe nicotine replacement therapy. It's not approved for kids under 18 right now. It's not something that's evidence-based for kids under age 18 right now. But if you are over age 18, you can get prescribed nicotine replacement therapy. So like I said, it's at the pediatrician's discretion, and they can advise in other ways for addiction as well, and for maybe counseling or something like that. The other piece is the Massachusetts has their quit line for any tobacco products. And recently, the quit line is now available for people as young as 12 years old and for any tobacco product, including e-cigarettes. So with this, you basically can call and get free counseling on how to quit, and they help you make a quit plan. If you're a parent or professional and you're with the kid, you can call and even put the kid on the phone if they say that's okay, or you can call on your own if you want advice that way. So this isn't out in the open that much yet because they're still working on more materials for young people and for e-cigarettes specifically, but it is available, so you can call. But there might be like a bigger announcement later on when they have more resources for kids that age. And again, if you are over 18, you can get nicotine replacement therapy free of charge on there.
I can tell you right now, the school is doing yeoman's job. We have Talitha Corner, one of our school resource officers here. They are on top of this to the best of their ability. I think the one takeaway, hopefully, that we can bring back is, we've got 17 parents here. We've got to get the word out as a community. So the best thing that I would hope that every parent here, if you could talk to 5 parents, because that's really what it's going to take. The school cannot police this building of 2,200 students, of the district, 2,200 students, in particular this building, by themselves. I mean, you've got so many different issues that you've got to be concerned about, respecting privacy, laws, things of that nature. So I think one of the biggest things we can do as a community is try to get this group to get to 117 the next time we do something like that. Because I know we've got the Board of Health here. We just passed new regulation in town bringing in the vaping. We did do an investigation here in East Bridgewater, but it's just like with people that deal with drugs. You cannot plug every hole in the dam, but as a community, we can collectively make an impact. So I would really encourage everyone to share this, so that we can get 100 parents in this room at some point. I can tell you the school is being very vigilant. I meet with Dr. Williams, who chairs that meeting, the superintendent monthly, with Hillary from the coalition, with the SROs, and we're constantly trying to think of different things we can do. They had a vaping night at the Middleborough High School basketball game. It was a great event, but we probably about 50 parents where it would be great if we could fill this room. So again, I really stress that community piece to really help bring this message to the forefront, because we are absolutely recognize it's an issue. We're collectively trying to do something to solve that.
Well, great, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys.